Okay, so again, we are starting energy. Okay, how the cell gets energy from how you get your food to how you convert it. And we're going to start out with the energy chart. So what this is, I've broken up energy needs into 2 steps. So there's 2 things, and I'm kind of abbreviating that. There's 2 things that the cell needs to do to obtain the energy that it needs, okay? And the way plants and animals do the first step is different. Okay, what is your food energy? Proteins, lipids, or carbohydrates? Which one has the most energy? Well, you're right. Lipids have the most energy. I should have worded that differently. Which one do we use first? Carbohydrates. We use carbohydrates first. As animals, we can convert other things to energy like fats and proteins. Our metabolism is actually very complex. Okay, but the main form of energy is carbohydrates, and that's what plants make with energy from the sun. So everybody's first step to getting the energy that the cell needs is obtaining the food energy, which is the energy in carbohydrates. So step 1 is obtain. That's just a fancy word for get. You've got to obtain your food energy. And again, we're mainly talking about carbohydrates. Now notice I'm going to have a little bit of a hard time fitting in my boxes, but you guys hopefully can. So step 1 for all organisms is to get food energy. But this box is split in 2 because the way plants and animals do it is different. Okay, plants, autotrophs or heterotrophs? Autotrophs. So in this little blank, I don't quite have room, so I'm writing up here, but you guys can write it right here. Plants or autotrophs are going to go in this column, and animals or heterotrophs are going to go in this column. Again, I'm writing it above the chart so that I have room, but you guys hopefully can fit it in the little parentheses that I gave you. Okay, so step 1 for both is obtaining food energy, getting your carbohydrates. Then we're going to come back to that top, but just to show you where we're going with this. Step 2 is to convert that glucose into usable energy. You guys just did the transport unit. If you see a picture of like cell transport that has energy in it, like a little energy bubble, the little bubble doesn't say energy. What does it say? ATP. And that's because ATP is the form of energy that is usable by the cell. Okay, it's kind of like if I go to another country and I have US dollars, is US dollars money? Yes, but I might not be able to use it, right? I might have to convert it first. The cell is the same way. If you have glucose, that is energy, but the cell can't use it that way. Okay, it has to harness the energy into ATP before it can be used by the cell. So the first step is to get that glucose energy, okay, either by making your food or eating your food. And then the second step is converting the food energy into usable energy. If you're going to forget what I'm talking about and you want to write carbs right there for carbohydrates, you can do that. So step 2, we're going to convert food energy into usable energy. You can see what I did last class. That usable energy is ATP. And then I like to draw a little energy bubble around my ATP. It helps me remember what it is. So okay, kind of like the kapow bubble in cartoons. I don't know why, but that makes me think of energy. And that's normally how it's written on your diagram. So that's step 2. Step 2, we will not talk about until next week. Next week, we will address respiration. This week, we're just talking about how we get our food energy. And for us, that is going to be like a one-time, one-sentence write-in. How do heterotrophs get their energy? We eat. Okay, we eat other organisms. I didn't really mean to write in orange, but can you guys see it? We have to eat other organisms. And again, the process of digestion is pretty complex, but we're not getting into all that. We're just talking, how do we get the food? We get it by eating. And notice my column or my box for photosynthesis is much bigger because there's more to know. What process do plants use to get food energy? Photosynthesis. So I'm going to write that in green. Do not take up the whole box writing photosynthesis because we are going to write our equation here. And to remember the equation for photosynthesis, you really just have to start with what plants need. Okay, so I want you to try to reason your way through what the formula for photosynthesis is if you don't remember it. What do plants need to grow? Water, sunlight. Let's start with that. Let's start with sunlight first. Sunlight is not a molecule, right? Sunlight is a form of energy. It's the energy that the plant needs to convert carbon dioxide into glucose. So it's not actually a molecule, so it's not going to go in my formula, but it's the energy source that's needed. So I'm going to put it 2 places. The first place, is just right up here in the corner. You can draw a sun, okay? Draw a little sun to remind yourself. All right, and then I'll show you in just a minute the other place that you'll see it sometimes. But right there, just to remember that it does require sunlight. But again, sunlight is the energy source. So it's not going to be changed. It's not converted in the reaction. It doesn't go in the equation. Okay, my goal for the next couple of days is for you to memorize this formula. Okay, because, and I'm not big on memorization, but if you memorize this and you can write it down like on your test or your quiz, you'll be able to use it to answer the questions. It'll be like having a cheat sheet that you've memorized. So we're going to work on memorizing the equation. So you guys told me sunlight. You told me sunlight. We need to address the water. Before we do, let me tell you, I can't fit everything I need in this space. So I'm going to do it on the next slide, but you guys are going to be writing in this box, okay? Just so that you can see. So this is what I have. Okay, you don't have to write this down unless you just want to go ahead and draw your skeleton. Okay, but this is my skeleton for the equation for photosynthesis. 2 things go into photosynthesis, and 2 products come out of photosynthesis. So what's on the left side is what goes in, and on the right side is what comes out. And does anybody remember what the arrow means? It means yields, which is the same thing as makes, right? Like if you read the back of a cupcake box, it says like yields 12 cupcakes. Yields means to make. Okay, so the arrow, it technically means yields, okay, but it can also mean to make. We are going to first write light where you might see it sometimes. We're going to put it right under the arrow. And again, I'll give you guys a minute to copy. If you're worried about space and you want to wait, you can wait. So we're writing light right there. Now, the other thing that you're going to see under the arrow sometimes is enzymes. The reason enzymes are there is because, remember, they're not used up in a reaction. They're recycled. So you'll see light right there. Sometimes you'll see enzymes right there. Anything that goes under the arrow, what that means is that it's needed for the reaction, but it's not used up in the reaction. So there's that. Okay, and then you guys told me plants need water. So if water is something plants need, should it go on the left side or the right side? Okay, let's do that. Write it here. You guys need to know the chemical formula, H2O, and you need to know the word as well. So the word is obviously water. Okay, that's pretty easy for water, but it's going to get more difficult with some of the other molecules we're going to write down. Okay, so water. All right, where do you guys want to go next? Do you know the gas that plants require for photosynthesis? Okay, so carbon dioxide. We're going to put that right here. All right, so we're done with the left side. Let's deal with the right. What gas do plants make that's super convenient for us? Oxygen, okay? So oxygen is a product of photosynthesis. Okay, y'all, it is diatomic oxygen. It's O2. So O2 is the oxygen gas that's in the air that plants produce.
Wait, so we don't really breathe in oxygen?
You do.
But it's not like pure oxygen.
It's not the atom oxygen, it's the gas oxygen. Well, I mean, technically it's both. All right, now, back on track. Why are plants doing this? What is the purpose?
Energy.
To make glucose, okay? The formula for glucose is C6H12O6. Okay, and if you think about that, we learned it like a long, long time ago. If you divide this whole thing by 6, you get CH2O, right? A carbon and a water, because this is a carbohydrate. Okay, so this is the formula for glucose, but you need to be able to recognize that it might not say glucose. It might say sugar, or it could also say like carbohydrate. It could say starch. So you need to be able to remember and recognize that, yes, in the chemical formula it's glucose, but when we're talking about the product that's produced, it might not just say glucose. It might say sugar or carb or starch, and they're not exactly synonyms, but they're all related. Okay, so recognize all of those. Now, I'm going to point this out here before I continue. We have this idea, like whenever I ask you what photosynthesis is, it's how plants make energy. Okay, yes, but technically it's how they make carbohydrates. It's how they make food. We need to talk about that a little bit differently, because when you eat, is energy the only thing that comes out of it? No, it's also used to build your body tissues, and plants are the same way. These carbs that they make, they are going to be used for energy, but they're also going to be used to build the roots, stems, and leaves of the plant. So I want you to keep that in mind. One way we can measure how well a plant is doing photosynthesis is by measuring its growth. Either its gain in height or its gain in mass, because the more photosynthesis you do, the more sugar that's produced, and the more starches and cellulose you're able to make to build plant tissue. So just keep that in mind. Out of habit, you might hear me mostly say energy, but that's not the only thing that photosynthesis is used for. It's how they build their tissue. Just like your food is how you build your tissue. Okay, so that's the equation, but now we need to be able to recognize some things about it. Okay, on the left side. Okay, this side is called the reactant side, because these are reacting together to form your product. Now, there's another name that you'll see sometimes, so I'm going to put that in parentheses. Sometimes this is called the raw materials. If I'm building a house, what would my raw materials be? Wood, nails, okay? Raw materials are what you're using, okay? They're your materials that you're going to use to make your product. So that's what goes in. What comes out is what's being produced. So what would I call this side? I mean, it is the house in that analogy. But if it's what's being produced, it's called the product. Okay, and being able to recognize reactants and products without having to think about it so much definitely makes interpreting these questions easier. I will also point out to you, I forgot to point this out to you, there's something missing with this equation. Do you guys know what it is? It should look a little bit wrong. Can matter be created or destroyed? No, so that means my equation needs to be balanced. The number of oxygens that I have on the left side should match the number of oxygens that are on my right. And right now they don't. Okay, balancing is pretty easy, but we're going to address that tomorrow when we do your full notes. Today we're just trying to learn the basics, but it is not balanced. And I will address that tomorrow. Okay, so this is one part of it. The second thing, we are going to draw a box around the purpose of photosynthesis. Is my purpose to be found is it found in the reactant side or the product side? Okay, it's going to be on the products. Is it oxygen or glucose? Okay, good, it's glucose. The reason I'm pointing that out to you, so just box in the purpose. As humans, sometimes we can be just a little bit self-centered and think everything revolves around us, and it's like, oh, plants are making oxygen for us. They're not doing it for you. Oxygen is a waste product that organisms have come to use for aerobic respiration. Okay, it's something we've adapted to use oxygen. Plants aren't doing it for us. Plants are doing it to make sugar for themselves. So if you're asked the purpose of photosynthesis, it is to make sugar, not oxygen. I'm so glad they make oxygen, but that is not their purpose for it. Last thing you need to know about, well, it's not the last thing, but last thing for right now that you need to know about photosynthesis is the organelle where it happens. What organelle does photosynthesis happen in? The chloroplast. And I'm going to do that in green as well. That's the end of our introduction to energy notes for now. If you are absent from class, please make sure to fill in the top part of your chart that we did in the video and shoot me a message if you have any questions.